My name is Ingrid Christophersen. My full name is Caroline Ingrid because when my parents were married, they didn't know whether they would live in Norway or in England, so I've got a Norwegian and an English name. Where are we? We're in Sun Valley, Idaho, and today is the 24th of March.
So that's sort of like our slate. And maybe you can just characterize skiing, how did you start skiing? Why did you start skiing?
I started skiing when I was 18 months. My parents came to Norway immediately after the war because my father had been involved in the war, jumping into Norway behind the lines. He had trained the heroes of Telemark, which is quite exciting. And initially, he was at Oslo University, but there was no housing in Norway. And we lived in a hotel in the country, and the only way to get around was on skis. And I must have tottered around on some skis. My poor mother from Australia hadn't a clue what to do. She dressed us in 15 layers of clothing. I always wanted to pee, and by the time she got all the clothing off, it was too late. So they used to call me Piddly Pants Penelope. And after that, they started building houses in Oslo, and we lived very close to the Holmenkollen ski jump, right behind the ski jump. And I literally put skis on outside the door, and I skied to school in the morning, took the little electric back home, and then every evening, because I loved it so much, I would ski on the floodlit trails. And all the downhill skiing was floodlit. And that was very exciting because if your boyfriend was skiing at the same time, you made sure you went up on the lift with him, holding hands, gloves of course, 2 pairs of gloves, in the dark. So I've skied all my life. I then started ski teaching. I went to university, but I started ski teaching in Scotland. And then I became a TD, a British TD, and then an international TD, which meant I could run ski races all over Europe, which I have done from the top of Europe: Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Russia, and all of the European countries. So every ski resort in Europe, really. And it's been my life, and my club, the downhill only club in Wengen, is one of the oldest ski clubs, British ski clubs. It's 100 years old in 2025, and I ran their junior training program. And then eventually I sat on 4 FIS committees. I think you say FIS, I call it FIS committees. I sat on the ladies committee. I am now an honorary member of the ladies committee. I sat on the children's committee, on the masters committee, and on the citadin committee. The citadin is the ski races which are won below World Cup and European Cup. And so my whole life really has been about skiing, and it has been quite wonderful, and oh, how privileged I am. And then we had lockdown, and I thought I must have some sort of occupation. So I thought of this anthology, and it was the most wonderful diversion, something to do during lockdown. It took a long time to gather all the authors. That took an awful long time. But it wasn't all that difficult. The difficulty came when I had to get copyright. And it was easy if I managed to get to the person himself. Yeah, no problem, of course you can have it. And some of the Norwegians even said, yeah, what do we owe you? But if you went through the agent, like Hemingway, you pay $1 a word. So all that took quite a lot of time. And that was the most difficult part of the whole anthology. So there we are.
What about the translating?
Translating, I've done. My father must have been Norway's very best translator, because when he arrived in Oslo after the war, everything needed to go into English. And so I always was around translating. And then I had the great honor of translating The Bookseller of Kabul, which in 1 year sold 600,000 copies in England, and I think you've had it in America. And I love it. It is the most satisfying thing in the world to have a Norwegian sentence and put it into good English. It is quite wonderful. So I've done 7 books now, including Amundsen, his biography, definitive biography.
Well, you always, maybe you can talk a little bit about your affinity for the Arctic exploration. Your affinity, your love of the Arctic exploration.
Yes, I've always loved Arctic and Antarctic exploration, because, of course, Amundsen and Nansen especially were Norwegians. We hear more about Amundsen because he beat Scott to the South Pole, but Nansen was far more important because he crossed Greenland on skis in 1888, and his book on skis across Greenland was really the book that kick-started skiing in Europe. And he then sailed his boat, the Fram, which Amundsen later took to the South Pole. He sailed it into the pack ice north of Norway, Siberia, and wanted to prove that there was a cross-continental current that went from Siberia and over to Greenland. And he got rather impatient, got off the boat, left his crew behind, and tried to walk to the North Pole. They thought in those days that the North Pole was sitting on solid ground like the South Pole does, but of course it doesn't. It's floating on water, and so it was pretty difficult to ski with all the pack ice and the hummocks and the. Anyhow, he had to give up, and how he got back is absolute miracle, but you can read about it in the book.
Well, and he had that book that he published in 1888 about the crossing of Greenland.
Yes, he crossed Greenland in 1888 with 2 Laplanders. We, when I was little, called them Laplanders, but apparently you're supposed to say Sami now. Sami. And they, of course, have skied for thousands of years.
Well, now, I'm just curious. Did you actually translate any of Nansen's things, and what do you think about his? Is there? Because he published, I think his first book was that was translated into English, wasn't it?
Yes, On Skis Over Greenland was translated into English. The Norwegian oil company, which is called Statoil, they produced the most beautiful book about Arctic exploration, and one of them was about Nansen, so I translated that for them, but it wasn't written by Nansen, but it was the story of Nansen.
Now, let's jump back in time here. How did, were you a member of the downhill only ski club? Did that lead you into becoming a British racer? Because you raced for the British. Yes,
but I was always British. My mother was Australian. My father, although he had 2 Norwegian parents, he went to a British public school, he went to Oxford, he was in a British regiment, he was in SOE, if you know what that was, Special Operations Executive during the war. So I've always had a British passport. And I skied for the British ladies team from I better not say that, from 63 to 68, long time ago.
So were you in any Olympics?
No, I should have really have gone to the 68 maybe, but I had a pretty nasty spiral. Yeah.
Did you get to watch them at least?
I watched. Did I watch any actual Olympics? No, I don't think I could. It was World Championships, certainly. Yeah.
And I mean, that must have been a hard thing to watch the British rise. Wait a minute. The British rise, we just had that. Didn't we just have a Brit win?
Oh, David Riding. It's fantastic. And Kitzbühel Ski Club have just written to me and said, could you get Prince Edward to come over to Kitzbühel, because everybody who wins in Kitzbühel gets one of the gondolas named after him on the Hahnenkamm. And so I said, yeah, I'll get Prince Edward. And I think he's going in the summer to have this naming ceremony.
Oh, that's
Yeah, with Lord Moynihan, who wrote the foreword to my book, and also Sir John Ritblat.
Well, that was kind of a shock for all of us. I mean, we're still thinking...
He's been good for a long time, yeah. And he's 35, getting married this year.
So, how did that evolve for you from being on the British team into becoming a FIS delegate and to being a TD?
Well, I think if you want to continue skiing, really, and continue in skiing, I mean, everybody always says, oh, I want to give back to skiing what it's given me. No, it wasn't that at all. I wanted to continue skiing. And so you go through the exams and you become a TD. And then I do speak a lot of languages, and I think that's a help. Because if you go to Austria or France or Scandinavia, it's useful that you can talk to the committee, the racing committee, in their own language.
Yeah, that would facilitate it. Now, in a sense, do you manage the downhill only ski team?
No, we didn't have a ski team. We're a ski club founded in 1925, but I ran the junior racing program. So we had juniors, children from all over Britain who would come to Wengen, and I would, to start off with, train them, and then latterly organise it. And we had trainers from all over, really, a lot of Austrian trainers.
So did the club actually pay for their expenses? And so forth?
No. Skiing in Britain is still very, very expensive, unfortunately. There are quite a lot of plastic slopes, and now, of course, there are these wonderful indoor proper snow slopes, and they have those all over Europe now. Even Oslo, to my absolute surprise, has got an indoor snow slope. So it just shows you what global warming is doing.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was little, there was so much snow we could hardly get out of our house. It was a big house.
Well, I mean, it is real. I mean, here we are in Sun Valley, and look at how the
and Rick, I see it in the Alps because we have glaciers in the Alps, and I see it so it's so visual that the glaciers are receding, like the hairline of a man, really, even quicker.
Well, I would think that the northern latitudes, the higher elevation. I mean, that seems to be where where skiing is sort of retreating to.
Yes, I would think maybe you're right about that. But even Norway, as I say, when I was little, you put your skis on outside the front door. But even Norway, Oslo is backed up by this vast wilderness called Nordmarka, where the whole of Oslo can absolutely revel in snow, and it's fantastic, huge. Even now, that is losing snow in the winter, and people can't just ski around as they used to. There were floodlit trails everywhere.
Well, do you think at some point I think there's a quote about you that Norwegians learned to ski around the time they learned to read and write, or something
before,
like that?
I'd say, yeah, before.
But is that changing because of global warming?
I haven't lived in Norway for some time now. I don't really know, Rick, but I can say that in the olden days you'd have granny, mother, child, and even great-grandchild maybe skiing together. 4 generations on skis, but I don't think you see that any longer. I really don't know. But I do know that Norway too is suffering from global warming. I mean, to think that you have an indoor slope in Norway is unthinkable. It was unthinkable.
What about Scotland? I mean,
Scotland too, yeah. Scotland is very wet actually. And so if the temperature is slightly above freezing, it'll just rain.
well, I mean, in these days, especially looking around the West, moisture is a great thing.
Yeah.
You can just
Yeah.
celebrate it if it's coming down. Well, now, what about, maybe we can talk a little bit about the downhill only ski club's traditional rivalry with the Kandahar Ski Club.
The Kandahar Ski Club was founded in 1924. Dash it. 1 year before us. Now they are in Myrren, which is on the opposite side of the valley from Wengen, and in between you have the Lauterbrunnen Valley, which is the most obvious glacier valley in the world. All English school children learn about glacier valleys when they look at the Lauterbrunnen Valley. It's a complete U-shape. So the Kandahar were in Myrren in 1924, and there were British people in Wengen. And the Kandahar club came over to Wengen, had challenged them to a ski race. But in Wengen there was always the uphill transport. There was always the cog railway, which had been built to Scheidegg in 1911 already. 1911 there was a cog railway from the Lauterbrunnen Valley and right up to Scheidegg, and eventually right up to the Jungfrau Joch, which is 14,000 feet, I think. And so the Kandahar snooty members came over, and the DHO tourists, they were just the Wengen Brits, put on these bibs which said downhill only, because we take the train up and we ski down. And so they all took the train up and they had a race down. I honestly don't know who won, but so the Downhill Only Club was founded in 1925 and will be 100 in 2025 and going strong. We have a beautiful clubhouse in Wengen. Wengen is the most beautiful village you could ever imagine, with the most wonderful skyline, the Eiger, the Monk and the Jungfrau. And I was there in '68 when John Harlin, your very, very famous mountaineer, fell off. And I can remember seeing his rucksack at the bottom of the mountain.
So the club was really formed out of that race?
Out of that race, yeah.
Now, what about, has the club always participated in the Aalborg Kandahar?
No, because the DHO is a local club. The Aalborg Kandahar would be the British team. So not individuals from local clubs. We are a club. We're not the National Ski Federation.
So in those days, because the Aalborg Kandahar earliest race is 31.
Yeah.
They, I thought, sometimes listed the club member. Or
They might have
racing for
listed
a club.
yes, they might have done that, but that would have been a national selection, not a club selection.
So now,
Yeah.
does the Downhill Only Club feed the British team?
Yes, we have. Yes, indeed, we do. Shemi Alcott, who was Britain's best female skier, she was one of my trainees, as was Ryan Regetz, who won a gold medal now in China for ski cross. He came and trained with us. And when he arrived back in Wengen only a couple of weeks ago, the celebration was unbelievable. They had a tractor, and they'd put a chairlift seat on the tractor, and they tractored him through the village, and the whole village was there. Unbelievable.
Well, that brings up an interesting point. I mean, how do you feel about all these different events that, besides slalom, giant slalom, and downhill?
I think the new president of FIS is called Jonas Elias. He says he's British, but he's actually Swedish. He was head of Head Corporation And he's even asking Ernie Eccleston, you know, the Formula One chap, how to reform FIS and the ski racing. And I think really it is time. It is time that that slalom, giant slalom, super G and downhill, there must be a new formula soon, because unless you're really interested, really engaged, you sit and watch telly and number 1 comes down and number 2 and number 3 and number 50, and really there's not much variation. I think it's helped a bit that only the best 30 go in the second run. That does make it more exciting, and the best person goes as number 30. That is better, but there needs to be a rejuvenation, absolutely. And I think maybe Mr. Eliash can do it.
You know, as a TD, I think you really appreciate the level of expertise that there is in those 4 primary disciplines. Will we continue to get a combined competition?
I don't know. I mean, they still had these Olympics. They had, actually the World Cup, I think, had combined, well, the Olympics had combined, didn't
Yes.
it? Because Michaela Schifrin, unfortunately, thought she might have made that because she fell in all the others, but she didn't. Yeah, you're right, actually. It's all very specialised, isn't it? David Riding doesn't do speed events. No. But I think the whole system needs renewing.
I also am concerned that I just don't put, I'm sorry, cross to me is not the same as a downhill racer.
Cross,
right.
ski cross.
Yeah, the ski cross.
No, but it's spectacular.
It is.
Ski cross is spectacular.
See, I mean, and so is these slope side and all these other.
Don't talk to me about slopestyle. Oh my dear. Mon Dieu. Mein Gott. I think it's, I won't say anything because our first bronze medal ever in skiing was somebody who did slopestyle. Yeah.
You know, it doesn't seem to me in the same caliber as,
No,
you know.
no. It seems a bit sloppy.
And, you know, frankly, you know, when somebody is sitting there with a gold medal from slopestyle versus, you know, somebody who just won the gold medal
From a downhill.
Yeah.
I mean, downhill takes real courage and it takes real technique to be able to turn your skis at that speed and to go straight and then round as though you're on a rail track is strength, technique and courage.
And it's on ice.
And ice, yeah. Of course, nowadays everything has been iced from underneath, yeah.
Yeah, I mean
that was one thing I had to learn about as a TD, is when you apply ice or when you apply what do you call it,
salt.
water, water to the track, to the piste.
Yeah, how do they relegate that?
What do you mean relegate?
Well, so that each course is about the same.
They try to make the course uniform from top to bottom. So it might be hard at the top and slushy at the bottom, and so they have to they have these huge cables with holes in them, and you have a large crew moving the cables down, and the water penetrates to the top of the snow, and then they move the cable again. It's difficult to get right because you have to take the consistency of the snow and the temperature, what's going to happen. It's not easy.
Well, you know, to be able to ski that so consistently is amazing. But it certainly makes running 30th not much different than running.
To running first, no. Yeah, you're right.
Now, in your day, it must have been ruts.
Ruts, huge ruts. I mean, I remember a downhill in Crans-Montana. Oh, I was terrified. It had snowed overnight and they hadn't really done anything with it, and the actual pisted part was, you know, no longer than that, so you had to stay in the piste And there was soft snow on each side. And if you went outside, you'd be in real trouble. And so you were out of control. And I remember in Italy once finishing the race, and in a forest really. It's a good thing you didn't hit a tree. So security, safety standards have hugely improved.
Yeah, just the width of the track.
The width and the rules. The rules. I mean, how Wengen gets away with the Lauberhorn, parts of which are no wider than this room, in sections, is unbelievable. But it's a classic race. It's been going on since before the war, and so they tolerate it.
What is it? The speeds have increased.
The speeds are huge, yeah.
That's got to be on everybody who's involved in staging a race. Every time has got to be thinking about that safety.
Safety has to be the most important. I remember in Wengen, somebody got stuck with his ski in the safety net, and the mesh was quite small. Or the mesh was big enough for the tip of his ski to get stuck, and he ripped his ski off. He ripped his leg off, and he died. Yeah, Reinstadler, his name was. I remember this was in the 1980 actually, and so after that they made the mesh of the safety nets much smaller, so you couldn't get your ski stuck in it. And sometimes the security, the A-nets have been up for too long and they're rotten and people go through them. That's happened too. One guy is in a wheelchair because he went through the A-net.
And of course the early races, when you were racing, there weren't any.
There was no, we had frozen straw bales on the trees.
So as the speeds increase, though, so
the safety has increased. Yeah, and the safety really is a good TD will really concentrate on that more than he will on rules and regulations and how many gates and what the vertical drop is and all that.
Well, now you were telling me that the proceeds from your book are going to get kids. Does the club do any of that? Do they, support?
No, not really. No, that's not really their business. But this charity in England called Snow Camp, run by a guy who's unbelievable. I've never known anybody so good at getting money as he is. Everybody gives him money because it's an emotional subject, really. Inner city children taken out of inner city conditions, tenement flats, never maybe even seen a green field and certainly not a mountain. And they come out and they learn to ski and as I say, some of them have become ski teachers. And it's fantastic. I mean, like 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 children, which is a lot for a charity.
Now, how does that work? Do they just rent the equipment for them?
Yes, they rent the equipment, yes.
Now, changing the subject and bringing it back, you just were in an event that was with...
I've just skied in something called the Amateur Interclub Championships, which has been going now for 12 or 13 years. We are 12 or 13 clubs in Europe, and we would like to be more. And there are categories 18 to 44, 45 to 59, over 60 and over 70. So you can imagine which group I'm in. 2 years ago I won the old ladies. And there's quite a bit of socializing, quite a bit of that going on, but really very high standards, and Arlberg Ski Club sends a group. And it's great fun. Socializing and ski racing internationally.
So do all the clubs match all the ages?
No, that's a good question. Well, maybe they do, I don't know. I think the sort of 45 to 59 is the sort of big group. And they can send 2 teams of 4, 3 to count, giant slalom and Super G. And actually very, very high standards. Quite excellent. And everybody's very pleased to win. Very pleased.
Do they rotate where they play?
Yes. This year, 2022, we should have done it last year, but we couldn't because of COVID. So 2022 was our race, and we've just finished middle of March. I'd love to have an American team come over. Fantastic.
Does the Swiss compete?
The Swiss send their academic ski club, Schweizer Akademische Skiklubb, yes. And the Italians send Skiklubb di Chiaotto from Cervinia. And we're going there next year. So that'll be really great fun, because they're very good at socializing.
Now, do you ever go to the Aalborg to race?
Yes, I've been in the Aalborg. I started my ski racing career training there in St. Anton. I skied in a huge amount of Austrian resorts, and in the summer too on Hintertux, the Hintertux Glacier. The Fulpnes, the, what's it called, Neustift, Fulpnes Glacier. Good glaciers in Austria. The, where's the one I used to take the children, the DHO children? Kaunertal, and one other place in southern Austria. I can't remember now.
You want to follow up? Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of questions. Okay, it was the Stubaier Gletscher.
Stubaier, genau. Fulpnes, nicht wahr?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Fulpnes,
yeah,
Neustift, Stubaier.
Neustift, yeah. But there's another one in Kärnten.
You talk.
Yeah, you have to
She's
talk.
talking,
There's
but you're looking at Rick.
Yeah, talking to her, but you're
Yeah,
talking.
yeah. There's a glacier in Kärnten, southern Austria. What is it called?
Mölltaler Gletscher.
Mölltal Gletscher. Yeah. So at least 4 or 5 very good glaciers in Austria where the whole world comes to train, including the Americans. And of course, there's one in Zermatt, Saas-Fee. The Americans train there.
Well, go ahead. Just no.
No, it's okay.
Well, I was just going to say South America for us. You know.
South America,
Everybody that goes
yeah,
to
Chile,
Portillo.
yeah.
But go ahead.
Okay, so when was your first time when you came to the Aalborg? Or to Austria?
I
or
first skied in the Aalborg when I was first on the British team in 19, and I'm not going to tell you because it's too long ago, but it was 1963.
And where was that?
St. Anton.
So where did you stay in St. Anton?
We stayed in the pension of the man who trained us, who was called Robert Falk. And he had a little bed and breakfast, and we stayed there and trained with him. And he was a very avant-garde trainer, actually. And our manager was called Maria Goldberger. She was a Polish refugee from the war, and she was amazing. She was very in front of her time. We were the first team who ever had video cameras. And she took us to a fitness chap in London who'd been in charge of the Everest expedition in '52.
Good trainer.
What do you know about Hannes Schneider?
Hannes Schneider, I think he came to Sun Valley, didn't he? He was one of the real pioneers of ski teaching. And I think Arnie Lunn, who I knew, was a good friend of his. And am I right about that? I think he was. Arnie Lunn, of course, should have a bigger name really in ski racing because he introduced an awful lot of good rules, but we seem to have forgotten about him.
Well, it was Schneider and Lund that created the Albert.
The Albert Kandahar. They started the Albert Kandahar. Yeah, the Kandahar because Arnold Lund was in Mirren, and he got his wife to found the Ladies Ski Club, of which I'm a member, before the Kandahar, 1923. So next year we are 100 years old, and I'm going to be the president. Don't tell anybody.
We'll go public.
As you know, Arnold Lang,
Arnold Lund.
Arnold Lang.
Yeah.
How do you know anything about the fame of Hannes Schneider in England? Did you hear anything?
Hannes Schneider in England is, I think, only if you are a ski expert or a ski history expert. No, I don't think the British know about Hannes Schneider. And they don't actually know about Arnie Lund either, unless they are real skiers or they are Kandahar members. No, it's not generally known that they were both ski racing pioneers and ski teaching pioneers.
So, is there still a British yearbook published?
Arnie Lund published the British Yearbook. Then it was called Ski Notes and Queries, and now it's called Skier and Snowboarder. Yeah, it's published by the Ski Club of Great Britain, which is a very old ski club, 1903.
And that was Arnold Lund Ski Club, wasn't it?
A big one.
Was it his ski club? Was he a...
He was the publisher of Ski Notes and Queries, or the Ski Yearbook, but Kandahar was his club, very much. And he was a Catholic convert, interestingly. Yeah. And his wife, Lady Mabel Lund, started the Ladies Ski Club before the Kandahar.
Back to the Alberg, what as you trained there and skied there, what did you like most, and maybe what do you remember best at the area?
About the Alberg?
Yes.
St Anton was more famous then than it is now, because I think other resorts have sort of risen, have been built, especially in France, all the purpose-built resorts. But St Anton was really the cradle of tourism, maybe, skiing for the punter. It was hugely popular and hugely important and hugely famous. But then, of course, France took over a bit with the Trois Vallées and with the Porte du Soleil and the purpose-built ski resorts, which are brilliant but rather ugly and no atmosphere. St Anton was a beautiful village.
What was your favorite ski area in the Alberg?
In the Alberg?
Yeah.
My favorite, I think, Zeus and Lech, really. Yeah. Lech is beautiful. And so the Dutch royal family think it's beautiful too, because they ski in Lech. My first clip-on boots came from Lech. Strolz had a factory in Lech, and before that we had these double lace-up boots. We were always undoing them and lacing them up again, and then Strolz produced his clip-on boots, clip-up boots, and they were brilliant. I think I was one of the first one in the British team to have them.
There's a boot. There was a famous family and the great racer from the 50s.
Do you mean from Wengen?
Yeah, from Wengen.
Come on.
He was chief of course.
What?
He was chief of course for the Lavaharn forever.
Oh, you don't mean Gertsch?
No.
No, Gertsch made bindings. Victor Gertsch.
Yeah, no.
Victor Gertsch. No, you're thinking of. Oh, what is that? Do you know? We're so high here. my mind is flying. David.
I know the store.
It's the third shop as you go down the high street. Yeah. Yeah, he made boots.
Yeah.
And there was the most wonderful advert the most wonderful advert with a beautiful lady and a beautiful bottom. And she had her boots up like that. And all you saw was this lovely bottom and her ski boots. And it was absolutely fabulous. Red sort of leotards and the ski boots like that. And it was fabulous.
Good way to sell
Yeah,
boots.
yeah.
As you knew, Arnulf,
Odlund.
what did he tell you about? Because he was a founder, so Gompertz and Schneider, and plus Lann, they built up the first
Kandahar.
Kandahar, and this led to be the FIS organization. Do you know anything about that?
No, well, FIS was formed in 24, I think, and so FIS was before Arnold Lann. Arnold Lann was a member of FIS, and when he put forward his proposals for slalom rules, they thought they rather sort of ridiculed him. But the FIS was there before Arnold Lann.
Look at Rick.
Well, no, I'm thinking too, because gears are turning, and of course those first Olympics, next
24.
Olympics, yeah, and 28 and
32.
32. No Alpine.
No Alpine. So 38 in St. Moritz were the first ones, and then the war, and then 48 again in St. Moritz.
Well,
No, 38.
36.
I do apologise.
36.
38 was in Garmisch.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was 36.
32, 36. 36 was Garmisch. So, in fact, Germany must be the only country that's had the Winter and the Summer Olympics the same year. Berlin and Garmisch, yes. Garmisch-Partenkirchen. And then 48 was St. Moritz.
So it took the FIS a while before they really recognized Alpine.
Alpine
as well.
skiing.
But I think there was a world championship and FIS race.
In 31, in Mürren.
Yes.
Yeah, there was. 31 in Mürren, they had Alpine skiing. But I imagine the Scandinavian influence in FIS must have been quite strong with the cross country.
Holding down those Alpine.
Holding down Alpine. Don't think they meant to do that. It just wasn't comme il faut, it just wasn't.
Up to snuff.
Yeah, exactly, up to snuff, yeah.
Well, I mean, and I think that Arnold Lund played a great role in getting the sport recognized, in getting Alpine skiing.
Well, the thing is that Arnold Lund's father, Henry Lund, had this travel agent, and he took an awful lot of people out to the Alps. And so when Arnold was small, he was brought up seeing skiing and seeing the Alps, Grindelwald, and especially Grindelwald, and Mürren, Wengen maybe. So his father did a lot to popularize skiing amongst the masses, maybe, to a certain extent, yeah.
Now, did Lund get involved with that family business at all?
No, he didn't. But his son now, his grandson, Bernard, no, they don't run that. I'm not quite sure that the Lund travel agency still exists, actually. They then were called Lund Poly. They were taken over by Poly, Lund Poly. I don't think they exist.
Now, is the grandson involved in skiing at all?
Yes, his son, Bernard. Yeah, Bernard. I had to ask Bernard if I could use Arnold Lund's part in the anthology, and he said absolutely. No, I don't. Peter Lund died not so long ago. Arnold Lund's son died not very long ago. So it's now Bernard, and Bernard has a son who skis, but I don't think they're involved very much in the organisation of skiing. I don't think so.
What about the family lore? I mean, do they keep all of the writings of? I think I've heard that his writings are down in William and Mary, the college, or something like that.
In America?
Yeah, in America.
Oh,
all
I
his
didn't know
Catholic
that.
writings.
All his Catholic writings, yes. He was, I think that took over maybe an awful lot when he was older. Took over from his skiing. Yeah, his conversion.
What are Catholic
Yeah.
writings?
I just wish I could remember what David helped me. The third ski. There's Alpiersport, then there's Gertsch, and then there's. Oh,
I should
I think I bought my boots there.
So we defer to your questions.
Yeah, what are Catholic writings? So,
Yeah, Arnold Lunn, in his, I don't know if it was his later years, but he converted to Catholicism and wrote quite a lot of, not theses, but he wrote quite a lot of autobiographical books about Catholicism, about his conversion. But I'm not an expert on Arnold Lunn. We had the most wonderful girl who was also a FIS delegate, Elizabeth Hussey. She
was his secretary.
Yeah, she was going to, yes, she was his secretary. She was going to write a biography, but I think she died before that came to fruition. Molitor.
Molitor.
Molitor ski boots, this beautiful red bottom, and Molitor boots. And the Molitor boots were not, they were clip boots, but there was a sort of a cable that they did this, and you just tightened them at the top.
And they still had an inner.
They still had
an inner
They
boot.
had an inner boot, yes, you're right, but they were very popular. So Wengen has produced Molitor ski boots and Gertsch bindings. Gertsch bindings were reasonably primitive safety bindings on a ball bearing at the front. So you fell hard, and the ball bearing came apart, but the plate was still on your foot.
Sounds kind of like a marker.
Old marker, yes, yeah. It was a ball bearing, and I remember the Gertsch family, I remember it was the youngest son who designed it, who engineered it.
Now, wasn't Karl Molitor chief of course?
He might well have been. He was a very good ski racer. He won the Lauberhorn, I think. But chief of course was really Victor Gertsch. Victor Gertsch was very big in FIS. I loved him very much. He had one blue and one brown eye. And he died only 3 years ago. And I wrote an obituary in the DHO journal.
How did, when you started until now, for you change the materials, skiing and boots and...
How has ski equipment changed? Ski equipment has changed out of recognition, and I always feel if, as a young ski racer, I had had the equipment they have now, I would have beaten Nancy Green, who I raced against. I mean, you had long, very little camber, wooden skis, you had Kandahar bindings, long lanyards sometimes, leather boots, and as for the ski wear, I remember I had +4s and red stockings, red woolen stockings, and apparently they interfered with the timing at the bottom because they used to say this girl with the red stockings is coming. And also when you think of the timing, after all, the timing was a man at the top with a whistle or a flag, maybe a man halfway down if you couldn't see from top to bottom, and the guy at the bottom then pressing the button when the guy whistled, having heard the whistle from the top. And now, of course, FIS stipulates that the timing has to be 1 to 1,000th of a second. So it's unbelievable how things have changed, and especially equipment. The skis nowadays, I mean, I skied on 195 slalom, 205 Jan slalom, and 210 downhill. So, unbelievable. All right, start?
Perfect.
Okay. Arlberg, what's the top of the Arlberg called? I can't think now. What? St. Christoph. St. Christoph, I think, I'm not quite sure if I'm right in this, was the head of Austrian ski teaching, really. And Professor Kruckenhauser was hugely influential, hugely important in the development of ski teaching. And I did my Austrian ski trainer exams with him. And I remember him telling me, this must have been in the 80s, beginning of the 80s, and I remember him telling me, as a trainer, if you're not enthusiastic, it doesn't matter how good you are. Kruckenhauser, but he's dead now.
You have to have the heart.
Yes, you have to have the heart. Yes.
What did you learn with Kruckenhauser?
What did I learn from Professor Kruckenhauser? Well, he was an absolute perfectionist, of course, but he passed me. He passed me 3 times. I had to go for a fitness session, and then an actual ski teaching session, and then a technical session. And it was on the glacier in Bad Gastein, above Bad Gastein, I seem to remember. It was a long time ago. And Professor Kruckenhauser was the sort of primus motor.
Nice.
Nice, thank you.
Cool.